Today, you can go online, search around for a bit, and then find videos of people with exotic animals as pets. But what is an exotic animal? How do we differentiate? Most people associate them with a sense of danger, but overall, I would argue, for the wrong reasons. Hi, I'm Jessica Lana, and I believe that individually, we should not own exotic animals. In this video, I will cover my reasons why. Now, depending on who you ask, definitions of exotic pet tend to go anywhere from a species not indigenous to the owner's locale to something that isn't a dog or a cat. For the sake of this video, however, let's just say that an exotic animal is one that you could not find in your local pet store. Okay, so these are going to be our sugar gliders, our chinchillas, and even our alligators at times. With that in mind, why can't I have one of those? What at its core is really separating the possibility of owning a cat compared to that of a chinchilla? Well, as it stands, you're typically going to be more of a danger to it and it to you. But how? To answer that, let's talk about domestication. According to Jared Diamond in his 1997's book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, The Fates of Human Societies, an animal must meet a total of 6 requirements in order to be domesticated. To surmise, those are 1. To be able to have a flexible diet. 2. To mature quickly. 3. To have the capacity to breed in captivity. 4. To have relatively docile dispositions. 5. To not panic when penned. And 6. To have a firm social hierarchy. And as it stands, the majority of animals that we consider exotic today and often dream of as pets simply do not meet these requirements, meaning that they're just not ready to be house animals. As that type of environment more often than not leads to their detriment than any real good. Pandas, for example, live solitary lives, often taking up vast areas of land in the process, subsisting chiefly off of bamboo. And as much as we may want to have them for their adorable nature, many of us just wouldn't be able to adapt our entire lifestyles just to accommodate the needs of one panda. Now, that doesn't mean they're necessarily impossible to keep in a household, mind you. I mean, heck, you could theoretically place any animal inside a glass box and call it a day. No, rather, when we talk about having a pet, typically, what tags along in the backs of anyone's mind is a sense of interactivity and care, to be able to easily provide for their needs while simultaneously being able to interact with them in one way or another. And that's what I'm referring to here. That being said, this is where the problem lies with our understanding of exotic animals. We're used to animals. Most people have one. And the majority of exotic animals that we look to as pets, we do so because outwardly they appear similar to things that we're familiar with. Because of this, many owners of exotic animals try to change the creature's nature so that it better suits their needs and their preconceptions of what a common domestic pet is. In doing so, they end up taking their wants into priority instead of tailoring to the needs of the animal itself. It's here that you have people decline, confining animals to cages that don't suit their needed environment, and even releasing them into the wild, where they become disruptors of entire ecosystems in the process. Further endorsing my argument here, and to go off on a bit of a tangent, is legality. If you're living in the States, the laws for ownership can be extensive and vary from animal to animal. As is, federal legislation does not in itself have a police force, meaning that most laws for exotic animal ownership are going to be enforced by your state. I bring this up because through this process you may find that the pet you are eyeing isn't even legal in your state to begin with, or requires consent by your entire neighborhood just to own. A good place to start when wondering is by checking in with your state's Department of Natural Wildlife or Natural Resource Department to see what kinds of rules or regulations may apply towards the specific animal in question, and then going from there with that given professional opinion, informing your own choice of whether or not to own. Heck, you may even find that the exotic animals you have in mind aren't even considered exotic for your given area. So tell you what, this is a lot to take in. So let's bring this down a little bit with a real life example to help ground all of this content. Well, it all starts with foxes, and to sum it up, back in the 1950s, in the old Soviet Union, existed a man named Dmitry Belave. Basically, Dmitry believed that he could replicate the domestication of dogs with foxes. Now, fast forward to present day, and his legacy of fox domestication in Russia lives on strong. Through roughly 60 years of this process, most of these foxes have been bred into a class known as elite. Now, elite foxes are the friendliest of foxes, and while they'll be friendly to their owner, that is not saying much. Foxes stink, they chew, they're destructive, and they require large open spaces. Additionally, they like to dig. Without the needs to forage and spread their scent as well, most foxes can even go on to develop behavioral problems, including natural fear and aggression. What's more, lacking a proper supplementary diet of taurine, foxes suffer from heart failure and ultimately die. And I'm just scratching the surface here. The point to all this is that this is an animal that has been domesticated professionally at the forefront of science for some 60 odd years, and it's still having these issues. I mean, if that's what you can expect from that long of an approach, you can just imagine what other exotic animals lacking that time and effort must be like to care for. And if you should fail to care for it, well, turning to a zoo or sanctuary to take over for you, that is an option. However, the cost of which to rehabilitate an animal is often too high for these organizations, not to mention that many of them simply do not have the space or the personnel required to house all of these new, now unwanted pets, meaning that there's a decent chance your animal will have to be abandoned or even euthanized. And while I know that's no pretty picture to paint, it is a realistic one that we need to be aware of when deciding whether or not to own. So what do? Honestly, just stick to getting a dog or a cat. Those animals are going to be much friendlier, and I can assure you, much less of a risk to care for overall, be it physically, mentally, or emotionally. So, the next time you consider buying an exotic animal, think back to domestication and whether or not your choice to purchase is the right one, or just a spur of the moment rush. Because really, these animals should only exist in the wild. I hope that you've had a good time, and thanks for watching.